Thank you so much, Julie. I'm really happy to be back here at Club 20, and I'm disappointed that Congressman Polis chose not to be here. For decades now, Club 20 has been a nonpartisan, bipartisan organization that has advocated for the economic future of Western Colorado. There couldn't be a more important undertaking. I am a proud member of Club 20, and Club 20 represents the 22 counties of Western Colorado. I'm here tonight because I believe in the values of Western Colorado. As treasurer, I have had the privilege and opportunity to be involved in some of the most important economic policy decisions we have made, and some of the ones that we have not. I led the defeat of the largest tax increase in Colorado history for education because I did not believe, as a father of 3 school-age kids, the money was going to get into the classroom where it belonged. Less than 2 years ago, I was a co-chair of a bipartisan effort with Governor Ritter to defeat a terrible public policy idea for a state-run single-payer healthcare system that would have bankrupted Colorado and sent thousands of jobs out of our state. And it would have taken, and it would have taken rural doctors, which are already in short supply in Western Colorado, right out of our state as well. This election is about all of you. It is about winning the hearts and minds of the people of Colorado, and you have to be present to win. The choices this election could not be more clear, and the differences could not be more stark. I believe we can fix our infrastructure challenges for the long term. I believe we can invest in the future of a transportation system and attainable housing, whether it be in the Front Range or here in Western Colorado for our young people. But we cannot do it by driving the energy industry out of Colorado. We cannot do it by taking 230,000 jobs and $32 billion of annual economic impact out of Colorado. Because the values that all of us care about of clean air, a regulated industry, and a safe and responsible industry are not mutually exclusive from having a functioning energy industry that contributes to everything from water conservation to the nearby Palisade Plunge. I am going to be a governor that stands up for Western Colorado, and I will be a governor of the Western communities that make up Club 20. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
So our next portion of the discussion will involve questions from our panelists. Mr. Stapleton will now be asked to respond to 9 questions from our 3-member panel, and we'll have approximately 2 minutes to respond to each question. Our first question is going to come from Merritt.
Thank you for being here tonight. This is a 2-part question. The urban-rural divide seems to continue to grow in Colorado. As governor, how will you work to unite the state and bridge that divide? And part 2, how will you manage meeting the needs of all the state, not just the Front Range?
As treasurer, I'm happy to have traveled to all 64 of our counties. I have been to the Western Slope dozens and dozens of times as treasurer, and I will be here dozens more times as governor. As the metro area continues to grow and expand, it is critically important that the next governor of Colorado have a holistic vision for the economic development of all of Colorado, and that includes the Western Slope. Many communities have not yet recovered from the economic downturn of 2008. Too often, the Governor's Office of Economic Development only lists as destinations for new businesses metro area communities, and not communities in Western Colorado. I will be a governor that works and makes sure that my Office of Economic Development works with Western communities to relocate companies right here to Grand Junction and to Western Colorado. But we cannot do that until we fix our infrastructure challenges, not just here, but on the Front Range as well. My opponent thinks that I-70 stops in Vail. I-70 goes far beyond Vail. And we need a holistic vision for economic development so that we can attract large Fortune 500 companies to the metro area, and that will be a trickle-down economic opportunity for smaller and medium-sized businesses to relocate right here on the western slope.
Thank you.
Our second question will come from Edie.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Treasurer Stapleton. What is your opinion of the Colorado Water Plan? Do you have thoughts on how to fund it? How can we ensure that Colorado's current and future water needs are met?
So I'm in favor of funding Governor Hickenlooper's water plan. I think it is indispensable that we fund that plan for Colorado's continued growth. I think we cannot lose sight of the important role that severance taxes play. Severance taxes contribute nearly $1 billion to our schools. Many school districts here in western Colorado, a critical funding resource. Severance tax revenues are inextricably linked with water conservation efforts. We have to have a functioning energy industry. And yet I am running against somebody who believes in a renewable mandate that economists say will cost Colorado $45 billion minimum. Our entire state budget is only $30 billion. I'm running against somebody who less than 4 years ago personally bankrolled a 2,000-foot setback. That if you ask any operator from the western slope to the Front Range would have driven their business right out of Colorado. We can forget about water conservation efforts in the future if we drive the energy industry out of Colorado. And my opponent has said that he is not for storage or cleaning existing tanks when it comes to water conservation efforts. So I don't know if that means that he's in favor of a continuous rain dance or what, but we cannot afford to have Jared Polis determine the water efforts going forward for Colorado.
Our third question comes from Jennifer.
With Congress and the U.S. Senate seemingly unable to come up with a national solution to our healthcare dilemma, what role do you see the state taking to address the growing cost drivers of our healthcare system? And what solutions should we implement or can we implement at the state level?
Less than 2 years ago, I was proud to be the co-chairman of an effort with Governor Ritter that started at the Metro Chamber of Commerce to defeat Amendment 69, a plan for universal Medicaid. I am now running against somebody who supports universal Medicare, something that is even more expensive than universal Medicaid. Because if you talk to anybody in the healthcare industry, they will tell you that half of the Medicaid population are children, even though they represent about a quarter or a fifth of the cost. Universal Medicare is simply unaffordable, and it will lead to rationing of care. It will lead to young people paying premiums even higher than they're paying right now. We have young people in many Western communities that are paying more for their health insurance than they are for their home mortgages or for their rent. It will lead to rural doctors leaving Western communities, and they're already in short supply. And there is no way we can pay for this. It will create an unlimited pool of individuals who are sick. Because when Governor Ritter and I joined forces to defeat Amendment 69, it was easier to qualify as a cost center for Colorado Care than it was to get a driver's license. We need to work with innovators from the private sector. We need to work with nonprofits like Hilltop, which provides valuable prenatal care to women, like Rocky Mountain Health Plans, to actually find a way that we can lower the cost of health care and make it more accessible and more attainable for all Coloradans.
And our next question comes from Merritt.
Thank you. The governor's office, through the work of John Swartout, has been very instrumental and effective in working with the Gunnison sage-grouse and greater sage-grouse plans, along with other species being considered for a potential endangered species listing. Will you continue this effort? And if so, what would that look like from your perspective?
I will absolutely continue the effort to protect Colorado's lands, both federal lands and our lands, which are absolutely critically important to the outdoor recreation industry, to a well-functioning, regulated energy industry, and for the economic future that all of us collectively want in the state of Colorado. I will make sure that whoever is leading that effort in my administration will work with the federal government on a sensible plan for endangered species going forward that doesn't take away economic opportunities from rural communities that can afford it the least.
And our
Thank
fifth
you.
question comes from Edie.
There will be a couple of proposals on the ballot this November to develop funding mechanisms to improve Colorado's transportation system. Club 20 supports Proposition 110, which would increase the state sales tax by 0.62%. Do you favor one measure over the other, and why? And do you have other ideas of how to improve transportation and infrastructure in our rapidly growing state?
Well, I do not favor the sales tax measure. And I don't know if Fix Our Damn Roads is going to pass. One of the frustrating things from the sales tax measure is less than 50% of the money that would be raised actually goes to roads and bridges. I think we badly need money for transportation, valuable tax dollars that come from Coloradans to go to roads and bridges, and go to projects on the western slope and the Front Range. And that is not happening. And we need a change in leadership in the Department of Transportation. I am for an engineer with core experience in building roads and bridges and not a political appointee leading that department. I am for transparency of tax dollars. I passed sweeping debt consolidation in Colorado with broad bipartisan support that held every agency accountable and transparent when it comes to issuing debt through the COP process. The Department of Transportation and Higher Ed, unfortunately, were not subject to that debt consolidation legislation, but they should be, because all of us as Coloradans are investors in the future of our infrastructure. And finally, we need to find dedicated sources of revenue, and I believe we can in our general fund, to go to infrastructure funding for many years in the future. I don't know if you've seen this, but sports gambling, it is coming to Colorado. The Supreme Court has said that it is legal nationwide. And I believe that if we are going to have brick and mortar sports gambling in Colorado, that somebody should contribute a quarter or 50 cents when they place a bet on the Nuggets or the Rockies or the Broncos to go to our infrastructure for the long term in Colorado.
Our sixth question comes from Jennifer.
The deployment of high-speed internet throughout Western Colorado is critical to supporting our schools, small businesses, and rural hospitals. Is there a role for the state and local governments to play in deploying broadband to high-cost areas? If not, how should we work with incumbent providers to incentivize them to build out to high-cost areas?
Well, the state Senate in the last legislative session came out with a plan over 5 years to have universal broadband around Colorado. I think that plan needs to be cut down to 2 years. It is inextricably linked to economic development and to more and more people telecommuting from rural areas of our state. And until we have universal broadband, we are not going to have the economic development, the job growth, the companies relocating to areas of Colorado that we desperately need them to. And we need to have a governor's office that doesn't work against the large telecom companies, but works in conjunction with them. AT&T has a very valuable and vital first responder program that they are trying to build out in Colorado that will have a bunch of very good residual benefit for rural communities in Colorado. And I will be a governor that works with the large telecom companies, the small telecom companies, to implement universal broadband in Colorado as soon as we possibly can. It is vital to the economic future that all of us want in this state.
Our seventh question comes from Merritt.
A recent education survey commissioned by Colorado Succeeds, the Common Sense Policy Roundtable, Club 20, and 18 other partners found that if Colorado students obtained the levels of education needed to compete in Colorado's economy, 57,600 more students with post-secondary education would result in $1 billion in new revenue and public savings and the creation of over 14,000 new jobs and over a $12 billion increase in Colorado's GDP over a span of 10 years. The number of students impacted would fill 3 Pepsi centers. In your first 90 days as governor, what specifically are you going to do to ensure more Coloradoans are prepared for and succeed in post-secondary education?
Well, during the course of this governor's campaign, which, by the way, started as like a survivor series of a governor's race, we started out with 16 candidates and we are down to 2. I was fortunate to be endorsed by Associated Builders and Contractors Association, and I had a chance to take a tour of RK Mechanical in North Denver. And as the foreman was taking me on the tour, he turned to me and he said, "You know what's really frustrating, Treasurer Stapleton?" And I said, "No," and he said, "We have our own training program here, and we have 4 times the number of jobs, high-paying jobs that we can fill with Colorado bodies. And so we have had to take jobs from people outside of Colorado, give jobs to people outside of the state of Colorado. And we don't want to be doing it." 2 weeks later, I was at J.K. Butler taking a tour of their shop floor. They're a big commercial window installer, and I heard the same thing. It is incumbent upon us in government to work in a collaborative manner with schools and individuals, especially in failing school districts, to encourage students to pursue skills-based learning, because not everybody should go to college. And we are doing a disservice to young people to saddle them with debt that they will never be able to repay, and a job that will never be able to pay off their debt, as opposed to teaching them valuable lifetime skills for jobs that are here in Colorado today and can lead to them thriving and succeeding for themselves and their families.
Thank you.
Our second to last question comes from Edie.
Club 20 supports an all-of-the-above energy policy. If elected governor, what will you do to ensure that all of our energy sectors have the freedom to operate without damaging the environment?
Well, thank you very much. I have long believed the values that all of us care about in Colorado. As a father of a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old, I want to make sure that this industry is safe. And the industry has worked collaboratively with Governor Hickenlooper to do just that. I am proud that Colorado has some of the most stringent regulations in the entire country for energy development. I am proud that the industry was willing to work with Governor Hickenlooper on one of the most extensive mapping programs after the Firestone tragedy. I am proud that the industry worked with Governor Hickenlooper collaboratively on an orphan wells proposal that will also increase safety. But make no mistake, the values that all of us care about, of clean air to breathe, of streams that we can fish with our kids in summer, of mountains that we can hike and ski in winter, those values are not mutually exclusive from having a regulated, a responsible, and a functioning energy industry in the state of Colorado. We can have both, and we must have both for Colorado's economic future. The energy industry contributes 230,000 jobs to our state. $32 billion of annual economic impact. It funds everything from the Palisade Plunge to the amazing riverfront project just blocks away from here, to the schools we care about, to the Cameo project just a few minutes away. And we need the energy industry for our schools, for our outdoor recreation, for the Colorado that I want for my kids and all of yours, and for future generations.
So our ninth and final question comes from Jennifer.
Treasurer Stapleton, rural Colorado has been a priority for Governor Hickenlooper, so much so that he has mentioned the word rural more than 20 times in this year's State of the State address. What policies will you implement specifically to support economies of rural Colorado? What strategies can be implemented to encourage businesses looking to relocate to Denver to take a closer look at our rural communities?
I'm here tonight because Western Colorado matters. I'm going to be a governor that keeps Western Colorado in my head and my heart each and every day that I am in the governor's office. I'm going to be a governor that solves our infrastructure challenges, not just for the Front Range, but for Western Colorado as well. I'm going to be a governor that improves access and affordable health care for young people. I'm going to be a governor that works with nonprofits in this community to increase funding for valuable mental health services so that people don't have to wait for months on end to get into Mind Spring and travel hours on end. We need a governor that has a holistic view of economic development, that recognizes, as the metro area over the last decade has grown by more than 1 million people, that rural communities on the western slope have to grow as well. But we cannot do that if we cost this state hundreds of thousands of jobs in the energy and healthcare industries. We can't do it. We cannot have the economic future we want. We cannot have the BLM relocating. They won't be here if we don't have a tax basis. And we cannot do it if my opponent, who has spent 10 years in Congress, refuses to take a position on the Jordan Cove pipeline project because he said he still needs to study it. The studying is over. We have 4 natural gas companies ready to go to export gas that exists in abundance in the Piceance Basin that would power the state of California for 50 years, and the demand is in Asia. Let's go, let's get this project done, and let's transform the economy of Western Colorado.
We now conclude the question and answer portion of this session. Now we will allow Mr. Stapleton to make his closing remarks. You have approximately 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy to be back at Club 20. I will be a governor that never forgets the Western Slope, that never forgets the rural communities that make up so much that all of us as Coloradans are collectively proud of. As treasurer, I've been fortunate to stand up for taxpayers every opportunity I have had. I have also passed bipartisan legislation without being in the legislature. I've protected county treasurers in the wake of a U.S. Treasury downgrade. I've passed sweeping debt consolidation that has added to the transparency and accountability of our state agencies. I worked with Senator Johnston just 2 years ago to start the first ever land trust investment board for Colorado's land trust, so that we could have more money going to K through 12 education without raiding another area of our budget or raising taxes. I've done many positive things for the taxpayers of this state as a treasurer, and I cannot wait to be a governor to do even more, to address our infrastructure challenges, to make housing attainable from the Front Range to the Western Slope, to increase the affordability and accessibility of health care, to make sure that we have a regulated and a responsible energy industry, because the severance taxes fund so much and touch so many things that we care about as Coloradans. I'm going to be somebody who continues the economic growth of the president's tax plan that more than 70% of Coloradans have benefited from, that economists say will bring Colorado $4 billion over the next 5 years, that have created economic opportunity zones, that my opponent, by the way, has entered federal legislation to repeal. I am going to be a governor that puts Colorado first each and every day, for my children and for all of yours. Thank you very much for having me tonight.